Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here bringing you all another Market Watch episode. So the past few days have been a little bit weird in terms of which cards exactly are bumping up in terms of price. We have a somewhat established meta formed, so we're not seeing too many new or spicy techs popping up every other day now. The best way that I can sort of make sense in my mind of what's happening is that people are looking for ways to make money off of Yugioh cards, so they're going every which way they can to find some cards that have even the slightest chance of being used either now or in the future. Obviously, I don't think this is a great strategy, but maybe some of these people know something that the rest of us don't. So we're going to take a look and make sure that we are aware of all of these price bumps so that you guys can come to your own conclusions if you have these cards or if you want to pick them up. Let's jump into today's episode. Okay, so we're starting off talking about a big one here. Let's take a look at Starlight Rare Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess. So I am very lucky. I have my own copy of this card in French actually, which I picked up for just under 300 Canadian dollars, so about 230 USD, which is amazing. Well, in case you guys haven't checked now, if you want this card, you are looking at forking over $1,200 US for a lightly played copy, or $1,400 US for a near mint. These are the lowest prices on TCG Player at the moment, and they are absolutely ridiculous. Like, I don't actually know anyone that's wanting to spend this much on an Appaloosa. I have seen a few people offering like $600, $700, maybe $800 on a copy. Nothing over the $1,000 mark. Honestly, as much as this price is kind of crazy, I did kind of think something like this would happen, but I thought it would be happening 5, maybe 10 years down the road after Rising Rampage is like a long distant memory for a lot of players. We will have another discussion about Starlight Rares kind of in general sometime next week about how I think they actually make really great long-term investments and what we can expect from them moving forward. That's a discussion for a later time. Now, at any rate, Appaloosa is probably the Starlight Rare that is seeing the most play at the moment, maybe tied with IP Masquerena, so it does make sense that out of all the Starlight Rares, it is the first one to see kind of like this huge price spike and go kind of crazy. As far as where it's going to be going, honestly, like that's anyone's guess. Starlight Rare Appaloosas are really hard to find, so it's not like people are going to try to restock them really quickly, and because they're so valuable and so highly sought after, I don't really expect people to be constantly undercutting each other to drag the price down. But at the same time, like, who is realistically making sales at these really extreme price points? If I had to guess, I'd say that it'll settle around maybe like the $1,000 mark, at least until people in the States like receive another stimulus check or something like that and proceed to buy it out even past that point. So speaking of cards that are overpriced, I want to briefly touch on Artifact Sanctum for a moment. This card actually has a confirmed reprint for Battles of Legend, which we're getting at the end of July, so in just about like 2 months or so. But on top of that, the Artifact engine is seeing virtually no side deck play at the moment at all, as everyone's side deck kind of revolves around cards like Evenly Matched, Dark Ruler No More, Lightning Storm, like that, things that focus on breaking established boards rather than preventing your opponent from being able to set them up, because the decks that we're seeing nowadays are so able to play through different things, or they're able to negate things early on. Even Eldritch, which does have some synergy with the artifact cards because they have level 5 light trap monsters and they can turn them into Pleiades, they don't play the artifact engine at all either. So what doesn't really make sense to me is that Sanctums, you're still looking at around the $15 to $16 mark for either of the ultra rare copies or the secret rare copy. I had a set that I've been holding on to since they got their secret rare reprint, right? And they've like kind of gone up and then they've kind of gone down, and I've held it through all of that. But I actually just decided to move mine because really I'm not expecting to use them within the next couple of months. And realistically, I'll be able to buy them back in a couple of months for much cheaper. I moved my whole playset for about $40 in cash, and I'm looking at cards that I'll probably be able to buy back later for around like $10 total, which I'm absolutely okay with. So yeah, if you guys want to make a few easy bucks and you're okay with flipping the cards and then buying them back later, I would look at trying to move your copies of Artifact Sanctum sooner rather than later. Alright, so on to a couple of really weird buyouts in my opinion. First up, we have Mischief of the Yokai. So I believe that this card was used back when Xyz monsters first came out because you could use it to try to reduce the levels of your opponent's monsters. So they'd summon like 2 cards out with Rescue Rabbit and you turn them from level 4 into level 2, and they'd have to try to go into a rank 2, which no one really played, and it was kind of funny. The card has popped up here and there over the years, seeing the occasional bit of hype, but it's never really been anything too serious. Well, apparently now someone is trying to hype the card up yet again, and we see the ultimate rare actually spiking from down at around the $5 mark all the way up to now being about $16 a piece. These were as high as like $25 or $30, but they've kind of settled back down since then. I don't actually know exactly why this was done, but if I had to guess, I'd assume it's some way to mess with Adamanticators or some other sort of like synchro combo spam deck, which is interesting, but really doesn't sound very good at all. I think this card might have possibly been good back in like 2015, but in the year 2020, absolutely not. It is way too slow and situational, I feel, and you can just link the monsters anyways in order to kind of work around it. To be fair, the card was probably chosen because it's another Star Strike Blast card that doesn't have a reprint, right? So it was probably pretty easy to spike it up in price. Either way, if you happen to still be holding on to this card from way back in the day, hopefully you will be able to move them and get some value out of them. Another really random card here, but Fairy Knight Ingunar is kind of out of nowhere now, a $4 super rare that came out way back in Legacy of the Valiant. So this is a rank 6 Xyz monster that is generic, but requires 3 Xyz materials in order to make it. Now admittedly it does have a really cool effect, where you can detach 2 materials from it in order to return all other cards on the field to the hand, and that effect also cannot be responded to. So theoretically it could help to win you games if you get it out onto the board. Now in the last video I did mention that cards that cannot be responded to generally warrant some attention when we were talking about Access Code Talker. This is not quite the type of card that I had in mind, guys. Of note is that this card hasn't been reprinted yet, so if there is a valid reason for this buyout, like if there's an actual like catalyst that's gonna drive this card's price up and drive the demand up, I'm sure that it will inevitably end up being a fairly high price, but for now I just don't see it. I mean, like, maybe someone thinks that because it's a rank 6 and we have some new Jinzo support coming that it might be relevant. I don't really know. That sounds kind of far-fetched to me. If you guys do know anything about why Ingunar is randomly like a $4 to $5 card, please let me know in the comment section down below. Okay, so of all the cards in the game that you could buy and cause to spike up in price unexpectedly, this maybe isn't the first one that you'd think of, but it definitely isn't one of the worst choices. So Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon is now a relatively expensive card again, as it was before its initial reprint, and you're looking at $25 for the secret rare version and even a whole $8 for the Megaton Ultra Rare. I think that with this, the one thing that a lot of the Yu-Gi-Oh people overlook is that there's a casual player market, right? People who don't care about what the best deck is or what's meta, but rather what deck is the coolest, what deck they're gonna play with their friends. And for a lot of people, they turn to Blue Eyes White Dragon. It's just such an iconic card. Now, Spirit Dragon is obviously a really key extra deck monster for the Blue Eyes White Dragon deck, and it is a really amazing looking card. With so many people receiving stimulus money or maybe getting paid a bit extra at work, I think a lot of different casual players now have access to funds to try to pick up these key pieces for the Blue Eyes deck. It's also a big part of why I think cards like Sage with Eyes of Blue or White Stone of Ancients have gradually become somewhat more expensive cards over time, despite how we haven't really seen any sort of meta relevance from the Blue Eyes White Dragon deck. Now, to be honest, unless we see another secret rare printing or a collector's rare, or this card randomly gets chosen to be one of the Starlight rares in a future set, I don't actually think that we're gonna see the secret rare version of Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon drop in price anytime soon, because for a card like this, there's always kind of gonna be that demand for it from both casual and collector's markets. Alright, so we just got a new Dragunity structure deck announced to be coming to the OCG later this year, so who knows when exactly we'll be getting it here in the TCG. Now, we did see the price bumps up of a number of different Dragunity cards, but perhaps the most notable one was the bump in the price of Dragunity Phalanx, whose dual terminal print jumped from being down at $8 or $10 all the way up to $25 currently for Lightly Played, or $40 for Near Mint on TCG Player, with only 3 copies or so available at the moment. Now, what the Dragunity support that we're getting is kind of a big question, so we don't know what previous cards from the archetype are going to be relevant with the new support. If you're checking the cards that you have at home, I think there are certain things that you should be keeping an eye out for, so I would be looking for original print cards from outside of Hidden Arsenal, right? So the Super Vajrayanas, the Secret Gaydirgs, as well as whatever dual terminal Dragunity cards you have in general, since a lot of DT stuff tends to spike up in price as well. I would pay special attention to the Dragunity synchros. I think cards like Trident and Barca, which were both from the Hidden Arsenal sets, are worth setting aside because they have spiked in price in the past. I think that if you have these cards, I would expect that it's a good time to offload them early while there's some hype around them and people don't know what to expect from the Dragunity cards exactly. I think that regardless, you're pretty likely to see the cards that are relevant reprinted in the structure deck itself. So if you're really worried, maybe hold on to some of the lower rarity versions, like those ones from Hidden Arsenal that you might want to use, but move all of those like higher rarity versions, the DT ones, at hyped up prices just in case. I never actually thought that I'd be covering a token specifically in a Market Watch episode, but I really want to quickly here give a mention to the Mecha Phantom Beast tokens, which are apparently worth like anywhere from $5 to $10 a piece, which is kind of crazy in my opinion. These are from OTS Tournament Pack 12, so you could only get them theoretically from OTS tournaments, and there's 3 different artworks actually, so technically it is a bit harder to pull a specific one as opposed to like the Nibiru token or the Sky Striker token where there was only one version. I actually always thought of these as kind of like bulky, right? I thought they were like 50 cents, $1 or so. So I actually have a small stack of them, but apparently they are worth a bit of money. I assume that the reason they went up is because, well, we have an actual Mecha Phantom Beast in the game in the form of O-Lion. So I guess some people want a token that matches the monster that they're playing. Obviously, you don't have to do this, right? You can use any token. You could use like a sheep token or something, but I guess Yu-Gi-Oh players want that like aesthetic or something like that. So I mean, it's really up to you guys, right? If you want all of your tokens to match the monsters, then I guess sure, keep it. But if not, and you don't mind using like a Sky Striker token or a Scapegoat token for O-Lion's effect, then you can try to sell the token for a few extra bucks. Alright, so this is one that I actually saw MCole40 talking about briefly in his Market Watch. It is Mecha Phantom Beast Blue Impala. I know it's 2020. Who would have thought that we were going to have to know the name of Mecha Phantom Beast cards of all things? Anyways, guys, this has really steadily, I guess, crept up in price, right? It was like 25 cents or less before. It was basically bulk, and it's now all the way up to basically the $2 mark. I haven't actually seen any sort of play or meta relevance out of this card, but what I believe is happening is people are looking at it as a penny stock option. Now, I do think that there is a somewhat decent chance that O-Lion gets banned within the next few ban lists. That is, if we don't see Needle Fiber banned first, and Blue Impala could very easily take the place of O-Lion in certain decks. It's a tuner that you can summon off of Needle Fiber, and it can also be special summoned off of Auroradon's effect, so even though it may not provide as much value, it might be a workable alternative in the future. It also has the potential to summon a token the following turn if your opponent controls monsters, but you don't, so a potentially interesting effect there as well. I don't think that this is one that you have to freak out about and grab dozens of copies of because I think it is still a bit early, but rather it is something that you should be aware of for its potential applications in the future. Maybe dig through some bulk, see if you can pick up a few copies for cheap. Alright, the last card that we're going to take a look at here is Crusadia Arboria, specifically the super rare version from the 2019 Megatins. Now before, Arboria was only around 50 cents or so, but now it's actually up to a whole $2 a piece, and I think there's definitely a possibility it can increase to around the $5 mark. Now, most notably, this is a tuner that special summons itself for free to a zone that is opened up by a link arrow, so it can be very useful in giving decks access to Needle Fiber. Also, I believe that its ability to summon itself out is not an effect that activates, so you can still use it the same turn that you search it off of Sangan. So one play that I did see that caught my attention was normal summoning Sangan, linking that into Almirage, using Sangan to search for Arboria, summoning Arboria to the zone that Almirage points to, and then using Arboria and Almirage to make Needle Fiber, turning Sangan really effectively into a one-card Needle Fiber. I think that this card, along with other different Holo Crusadias from the 2019 Megatins, such as Reclusia and Maximus, are really underrated and are cards that you should be looking to pick up and hold on to for the long term, because they do have a lot of potential to pop up here and there in future formats as long as link monsters exist. Alright guys, that is it for today's episode. There wasn't anything super crazy that we talked about today. Everything was pretty tame. There were, of course, the usual buyouts in the collector's market and the ghost rares market, but those are discussions for another time. There were definitely some weird cards that we talked about that I was not expecting to ever have to discuss on Market Watch. But then again, we live in unprecedented times both in the real world and when it comes to the Yu-Gi-Oh market. So every day is throwing a ton of new things at us and we just kind of learn with it as we go. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button for me. Also, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what else is going on in the market that I maybe didn't cover so that I can possibly cover it in a future video and keep all of you as informed as possible. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to Tombox and myself for all of the latest Yu-Gi-Oh content. And yeah, so until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.